Namaste, everyone, again, and welcome back to the second segment of this module. We will start now with how music as a category of art and craft fits into our everyday life. Not on big stages or in concert halls, but in kitchens, temples, farms, or village gatherings. These songs weren't written for audiences. They're part of how people focus, remember, and connect with each other and with the world around them. And honestly, it's kind of amazing how much of it goes unnoticed until you stop and pay attention. So where does this music begin in everyday life? Let's start with a common space, prayer. And you'll see how much is happening even when things look so simple. If you listen carefully, the way people start their day often says a lot. In many places, that beginning includes a song. Not a recorded track or a formal chant, but just a voice. Sometimes it's just one person, sometimes a group. It may be heard inside a mandir, outside a kitchen, or even in a local ceremony. In Lakshadweep, for instance, people sing mala songs in a group. They sit in circle and repeat short lines together. There's no stage, no instruments, just voices. Travel up north in Punjab, Gurbani Sangeet follows a different musical structure. It's sung inside gurudwaras as part of daily prayer. The words come from Guru Granth Sahib. The melodies help hold focus, both for singer and for those who are listening. And sometimes the setting is quieter. In Kerala, the Sopana Sangeetam is sung in mandirs, usually by one or two people, sometimes with small drum. It's a slower style, but like the others, it's tied to the setting. And sometimes songs are part of rituals that ask for something more active, maybe something participatory. In Kumaon and Gadwal regions of Uttarakhand, for instance, Jagar songs are sung to invite ancestors into the present. The idea that music can carry something larger than the moment is something you see again and again and again. You see similar patterns in the Northeast as well. Goriya songs, for instance, in Tripura are used in seasonal rituals, often with group movement. In Nagaland, Halia Melu songs are sung during gatherings that mark certain stages of an event. The sound and language vary, but how people use the songs is quite similar. Each of these traditions come from a different setting. Some happen in mandir, some at home, some in the open. But what connects them isn't the scale or the setting. It's about how people use music to stay with the moment across the country. This isn't classroom learning, again. There aren't songs found in textbooks or preserved in notation. They're part of Jnana Parampara, a living stream of knowledge. And maybe what stands out the most is that many of these songs don't sound like much when you're taking them out of context, or a stage in a recording. They might seem too plain or too repetitive. So they have a special place in the setting, in the place where they belong. With the people who sing them, that makes, and that is what makes sense about this. They are so deeply tied to the communities who these songs are part of. You go every village, every taluka district will have their own traditions of music and songs, and it's just amazing. In the right place, even a few repeated lines can feel full. Similarly, there are songs that are related to harvest and work and effort and hard work. When people work together, whether it's planting, harvesting, drawing water, or pounding grain, music often finds its way in. Also, who would have thought there were songs for work? You see this all across the country. In Assam, where the Hosori songs are sung during Bihu. Groups go from house to house, singing in celebration of the harvest. It's festive, but it's also tied to the land, to the labor that made the season possible. That same link between music and agriculture shows up in Tamil Nadu. Southern states like Karnataka, Andhra, during Mattu Pongal, which is celebrated on the second day of the month of Thai. A farmer sings song that praise the cattle who worked alongside them in the fields. In Chhattisgarh and primarily in Surguja and Rajpur, Suageet is sung. These women are preparing grain or gathering in courtyards. In Rajasthan, Panehari songs are carried by women as they walk, long distances to fetch water, and you could be solitary task. Otherwise, a solitary task will become something very social and even joyful. In fact, it's no surprise that Bollywood is full of songs. We don't imagine and think about our movies and our theaters without music. It's just unthinkable. Back in the days when we were growing up, at least I remember for myself, I would watch movies in Hollywood and I would be struck by the amazement. I would be struck by the absence of songs in those movies. And I realized it's a very Indian phenomenon. Across history, in our kavyas, mahakavyas, in our ancient traditional texts, we find rhythms, songs appearing all around. Many of our Mahakavyas are actually poems. It goes on and on. Even quite a landscape. the same patterns emerge. Jammu and Kashmir, Bhaka songs are sung during farming seasons, so I mean, I can go on and on. But whether you're drawing water or drying grain, there is a rhythm that brings people together. And something about that is just grounding. The places change, rice field in the south, desert trail in the west, hillside farm in the north. But what people are doing with them is remarkably similar. They're using music to stay in step with each other, with the work in front of them. It probably allows them to make the work becomes lighter when everybody's singing together, and these songs are built into daily life. They help carry the load. They make it easier to keep going, quite literally, actually. And more than anything, they make space for others to join in. And once you start noticing how music shapes the way people move through the day, you also start noticing something else, that some songs aren't just tied to task. They're tied to memory. They carry stories not written down or memorized, but passed along by voice through generations in that Gyan Parampara. And that's why, let me move to the other idea, which is narrative music. In every region in Bharat, there are songs that carry stories. Not everyday ones, but the kind people return to again and again. Stories of heroism, battles, loyalty, loss. For instance, in Bhopal, Bundelkhand region, even in UP and other places in MP, you'll hear these Allah Udal ballads. These songs tell the story of warrior brothers, brave, loyal, defiant. They usually performed in village gatherings or local melas with a single voice leading and crowd listening to closely. Songs like these in different variations take place all around, these narrative music, all around the country. In Maharashtra, we have Pavadas. These are ballads about Maratha heroes, especially the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Like Allah Udal, these songs carry history, but they do in a way that feels personal and even urgent. In the south, in Tamil Nadu, Virudu are sung as praise verses about kings, warriors, temple patrons. Sometimes performed during festivals, sometimes as part of longer storytelling tradition. They serve the same purpose, which is to honor someone through the story and to use music as a way of remembering. They come from different regions, different styles, speak different languages, but at the core, they're doing the same thing. They're keeping stories alive through voice. And that's the thing about these songs. They weren't written to be remembered. They're remembered because people keep singing them, carrying forward the Gyana Parampara of ancestors and communities. How can we talk about music and not about dance? Let's move to dance now. This section of the segment looks at how dance is used in different parts of India, not as performance for an audience, but as part of local routines and events that inspires everyone in the community. So some dance tells stories, some are part of rituals, some come from forms of physical training. The steps, music, and the setting may change, but each form has a specific role in the community where it's practiced. So let's start with dances that tell us stories, and there's so many. So let's talk about narrative dances. Some stories are told through books, some through songs, and the songs one are particularly interesting for us. In many places, they're told through dance also, but not the kind that is done on the stage for applause. These are full-length stories with characters, conflict, conversations, shaped for communities that already know them, but they want to hear them again and again. For instance, in Manipur, a performance might tell you a story from Krishna's life through Manipuri. In Tamil Nadu, especially in the areas of Dharmapuri, Arcot, and Chengalpattu, the same episode might appear in Terukuttu play. One is quiet and restrained, actually. The other is loud and direct. But both are doing the same thing, telling a story that the audience already know, but in a way that keeps them listening. In regions like Tulunadu of Karnataka, Yakshagana runs through the night. It stretches scenes, repeats lines, and plays with humor and tension. In Bengal, Chow dance, which is originating in Purulia district, does the same, but through large masks and short structured acts. They're both rehearsed way of storytelling. You see the same pattern in Assam, where Bhavna and Satriya are performed in the monasteries. The space is very formal there, the delivery more measured, but the role of the dancer stays familiar. Stepping into the characters the community already understands. Come to Gujarat and you'll find Bhavai, which is primarily associated with Kutch and Kathiawad. But here also the tone changes. The performer might move between roles quickly, shifting from drama to humor, but the energy is different. The structure is still there, beginning, middle, and end. One performer might play several parts. The story always moves forward. In Odisha, particularly in Raghurajpur district, which is known for Kotipua, dancers perform stories learned through years of repetition. Go to Himachal Pradesh and you will find Karyala, originated in Junga. It performs, it's performed outdoors, during seasonal gatherings. It uses fewer props, smaller spaces, and local language, but still holds attention through stories everyone expects to hear year after year. It's pretty incredible, right? I mean, these performances aren't for tourists or cameras. They're for people who've seen them in their lives still show up to watch. That's what Gyan Parampara looks like. It's not unusual or rare, by the way. It's just there. It's part of everyday life. People grow up with it, hear the same stories, same songs again and again, but they don't get tired of it because it's familiar. It still means something. It's not about learning. It's about living with something over time until it becomes basically a second nature. And that's how knowledge lasts, not because it's preserved, but because it's used. Across these places, there's a pattern. The dance might look different, the speed might change, some tell long epics, other focus on short scenes, but they're all using performance as a way to pass something on, through repetition, tone, and memory. And there's something so powerful in that. Many of you will remember that we discussed something very similar in the third module as well. You see, the connection, the offering, these are beautiful journeys. And no matter where you go in Bharata, you will find one way or the other, something of this form taking place everywhere in this country. Let's now take a journey through dance that becomes part of the prayer. Dance in temples and dance and the confluence between the two. Someone lights a lamp, drum starts in a distance, a group gathers, maybe in a mandir's courtyard, maybe outside in a home, and then without introduction, the dance begins. This is true for many parts of India. Dances are different, but the role they play is very, very similar. Take Odissi in Odisha. Classical form started in mandirs. The movements are slow and detailed, but they aren't improvised. They're built around offering and attention. Bharatanatyam in Tamil Nadu does something very close. The form is sharper, maybe, and the technique is more visibly structured, but the idea isn't very far off. But not every temple dance is quiet or contained. Think about Bhutakola in Karnataka, loud, fast, and done in public. It's not about precision, it's about presence. And while the style is far from Odissi or Bharatanatyam, the purpose to carry a ritual, to be part of something is the same. And you see this again in Padayani in Kerala, which is central to Travancore. The performers are wearing, long, large masks. They dance in formation and move to beat of heavy drums. It's done during specific times of the year and people know what to expect. But the idea is the movement is tied to the temple setting. Across Rajasthan, and Malwa regions of Madhya Pradesh, for instance, in particular, Gangaur dance brings us to a more domestic setting. Groups of women, they dance during the Gangaur festival. This is the time which is tied to marriage and seasonal change, a beautiful festival. These steps are less formal, but they're familiar. They're taught by watching, by joining in, by doing it every year without needing some sort of a written guide. And you know what's fascinating? None of these dances were built to impress strangers. They're meant to be understood, engaged, and performed by the people watching and even performing, and that's why they last. It's not a performance in a theater or for spectators. It's a performance for the performers. And you put all these forms side by side and you'll notice something. They don't belong to the same style. They don't have the same artists, same rules, but they happen everywhere in some form or the other. And that is the beauty of Bharata. That is what makes us one. There are different kinds of dance forms. Maybe I should tell you something about the war dance or the warrior dance. In many parts of India, communities have created dances that draw directly from how people prepare for battle. They may have different name styles, but the structure purpose often overlaps. If you look at some of them, in Odisha, you have, let's say, Ghumra. The dancers wear drums across their shoulders, and the movement is built around strength and group coordination. It looks like a performance now, but it comes from a space of training and alertness. And that idea, using dance to prepare the body, is something we also see in Naga warrior dances. They aren't choreographed in classical sense, but they're highly organized. The dances move together in patterns that show formation, intent. You go to Jharkhand and you'll find Chau dance, which shows the same thing through another route. Its movements are drawn from martial training. Even when the dance tells a story, the base is still physical preparation. In Goa, for instance, Godamondi, and you have to pardon my pronunciation for many of these names, it brings, this idea into a more theatrical space. Dancers, they wear horse body costumes and carry wooden swords. The form is festive, but the steps follow a logic we've already seen: train movement, group alignment, control energy. And then there is Perini from Telangana. This one is direct about its purpose, actually. It was a dance done before the war to build focus and physical readiness. Today, of course, it's staged in a different context. But its speed, power, control, they still carry what it was built for. What's clear when we look at these together is that they're not random. Each of these forms we developed in different regions, but they're answering somewhat of a similar question in terms of how do you build strength, unity, and focus through movement. Think about, how every part of Bharata has a tradition like this, without having a central category, central authority that is guiding all this to happen. If this is not one country, if this doesn't explain the oneness of this country, I wonder what does. Let's move to, for instance, another art form, the drama, the theater. In India, many of you would know that theater doesn't always begin on a stage. It can start in a village square, behind a screen, in the middle of a crowd, maybe in the streets. And sometimes the actors use puppets. Sometimes they will speak directly to the audience. What matters is a setup, space, story, and people ready to watch. That's all that matters. This section, here we will look at how different regions have shaped their own way of performing, built not for distant audiences, but for the people right there. In terms of drama and theater, let me start with the puppet theater. When we think of puppet theater in India, the first thing that hits us is the variety. Every region seems to have its own way of doing it, its own materials, its own style, its own sense of rhythm. But if you start paying attention, there is something more interesting. The way these forms start to talk to each other, quietly without trying. Take Odisha's Ravan Chaya. These puppets don't bend. They don't need to. Their power comes from their stillness, from the way light and shadow play off a simple screen. Now compare that to Thol Pavakuttu in Tamil Nadu. It originated in the Bhadrakali temples of Palakkad region, where the puppets are joined. Their soundscape is louder and movement is much more layered. On the surface they feel like opposites, but both are drawing from same instinct. Strip things down, light from behind, let silhouettes do the storytelling. It's almost like idea traveled, picked up accents and settled into different homes. They look very different, but deep down, the fact that they exist is what is making us one. And then there is this shift from shadow to strength. In Gombe Yatta, which is popular on the coastal regions of Karnataka, particularly in Kasaragod, in Kerala also, we see puppets hanging from above, moving in space with a kind of freedom that shadows don't have. Intent is similar. Step into Andhra, and suddenly it's not one puppeteer or even one form. Tolu Bambalata is a bit of everything. Narration, movement, singing, improvisation is flexible, like gathering around campfire when everyone joins in. In Odisha, that's a screen. In Tamil Nadu, there's a chorus of voice. In Gombe Yatta, the movement is exact, practiced, confident. So what you see is not a set of isolated forms, but techniques learned into each other, maybe borrowed from each other, their silences, postures, or rhythms. You go to Rajasthan, and things shift there again. Katputli, for instance, doesn't hide its puppeteers. Often they are right there, part of the act. The puppets are carved, painted, dressed up, and moved with the string, but it's a voice full of sharp jokes, improvised lines that drive the show. There's something raw and quite direct about it. In Lucknow, in UP, for instance, the glove puppets of Gulabo Sitabo, they bring a different energy. These aren't epic stories or larger-than-life characters. They are sharp, quick, and often funny. These puppets argue, interrupt, and speak over each other. The core idea is the same. We see our own lives and we see our own inspirations in these puppets. Move to Assam in the northeast and you see how Putla Nach turns to rod puppets. Slower in movement, but handled with the same care. The materials change, the scale shifts, but the art remains. Isn't it fascinating how across all these regions, east to west, north to south, the puppets look different, but they do exist. You see the tricks are similar. You start to notice how shadow puppets in the south use silence the way the string puppets in the west have they use movement. Or how the group narration in Tamil Nadu feels strangely close to the banter in UP. It's not about one tradition copying another. It's more like they're all arriving in similar answers through similar set of questions, but in different places over time. This beauty is not just confined to these specific spaces. When we step into open spaces, open air or through traveling, there is something about theater when it happens outside, under the sky, in front of the crowd that didn't buy a ticket, no walls to keep the world out. It's immediate. So there could be some performance which are there for a particular group of people, but then there are others which are simply done under the sky in the open. The performers are close, the audience are closer, and everything depends on energy, timing, and connection that holds people in place. Think about, for instance, in Kerala, we have Kodiyattam. It's one of the oldest forms of theaters traditionally performed in temple spaces. Even with the classical roots, the performances, they make space for pause, for gaze, for breath. All things that work only when you have a live watching crowd that isn't going anywhere. In UP, in Uttar Pradesh, Ramlila comes to life. Open fields turn into kingdoms, local villages, they turn into warriors, and a story everyone just knows plays out several nights. It's participatory in particular, through a different way actually, not through a technique but through memory. The crowd knows what's coming, but they still show up. The lines are spoken again, scenes are played again, and somehow it does not feel old. Move to the west of this country, go to rural Maharashtra, Tamasha hits very different note, faster, sharper, built to hold attention in crowded village squares. There's music, dance, comedy, and ability to shift tone in a second. Tamasha performers aren't asking for silence or focus. They pull it from the crowd. It's loud, bold, and flexible, a form that knows how to handle surprise. In Manipur, you'll find Shumang Leela. Unlike Tamasha, it's done in the round. The actors in the center, audience in full circle around them. There's no mic, no stage, nothing separating performer and the spectator. The actors often switch roles, genders, tones. They switch, sometimes they address the audience directly. It's intimate, it's immediate. The performance depends on crowd's mood and often shifts to match it. Go to the east and in Bengal, you'll find Jatra picking up speed. These Jatra shows travel from village to village with loudspeakers, bright lights, full night performance that'll go until dawn. It's part spectacle, but part traveling event. In Kashmir, Bhand Pathir, it plays out in village squares. This form combines with satire, music with movement, often poking at social or political themes. These performers are called Bhand. They move between characters with ease, physical humor, sharp lines, improvisation. What connects all these? Not the storylines, not the language, not even the format. Is the fact that in every part of India, we see these art forms existing. Clearly, the land is one. What else might we notice if we keep watching and listening? Namaste.